There was a time when your only prayer was this: Father, help me make it through the night. Don't let me fall apart. Just let me last until morning. You didn't ask for much. You didn't ask for victory. You didn't ask for the mountain to move. You just asked for enough strength to keep breathing until the sun came up again. And you said that prayer more nights than you can count. Maybe you said it in a hospital room with machines beeping in the dark and your hands gripped together so tight your knuckles went white. Maybe you said it in a kitchen standing at the sink at 2 in the morning, the house quiet around you, the weight of everything pressing down on your chest. Maybe you said it in a car parked in a driveway, unable to go inside yet, unable to face one more day of pretending you were fine. You wore that smile, the one that told everyone around you that you were holding it together. But inside you were holding on by a thread, and here is what I want you to know before we go any further. He heard every single one of those prayers. Every single one. He was near in those nights when you thought silence meant absence. He saw the smile you wore while your soul was exhausted. He saw the quiet fight, the one no one else knew about, the one nobody stood up and applauded, the one you fought alone in the dark hours when everyone else was asleep. Not one moment of that struggle was hidden from his eyes. Not one. And now, after all of it, after the storms, after the loss, after the nights that stretched on past what felt bearable, you are still here, still standing. And he has something to say to you. Not about what you endured, but about who you are because of it. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. There is a difference, a holy difference, between two kinds of people who come out the other side of great pain. The first kind is the survivor. And if you have been through what life has put you through, you have probably called yourself that. A survivor. You have worn it like a badge. You have earned it. And in many ways, you deserve to carry that word. But here is what the survivor's life often looks like on the inside. The survivor keeps looking over the shoulder, always waiting, always bracing. The survivor wakes up on a good morning and wonders what is about to go wrong. The survivor receives a piece of good news and waits for the catch. The survivor sits in a season of peace and cannot quite settle into it because chaos has been home for so long that calm feels suspicious. The survivor may still breathe, the heart may still beat, the feet may still move forward, but deep inside the heart is guarded, closed, braced for the next blow. And you know that feeling, don't you? You know what it is to lie down at night and feel your body finally relax and then feel the fear creep in quietly. The thought that says something is coming. Something always comes. Don't get comfortable. Don't let your guard down. Don't let yourself believe that this peace is real. That is what years of surviving can do to a soul. It trains you to brace, and he understands that. He does not look at that fear with disappointment. He looks at it with deep, steady compassion. Because he knows what it cost you to keep getting up. He knows what it did to your heart to be hurt more than once by life. He knows why the walls went up. He knows why the guard went on. He knows why trust became difficult and hope became something you reached for carefully with one hand, keeping the other hand free just in case. He knows. And he is not asking you to pretend those walls were never necessary. But he is asking you gently, steadily, with more love than you have ever fully received, to hear something new. You are not just a survivor of pain. You are a child he carried through pain. You are not just someone left standing after the storm. You are someone he held while the storm tried to swallow you whole. And there is a world of difference between those two things. Do you feel the weight of that difference? The survivor comes through by holding on, by gritting teeth and pushing through. But you came through because something stronger than you was underneath you the whole time. You did not come through because your fear was strong enough. You came through because he was faithful. You did not endure because pain had mercy on you. You endured because his hand was underneath you when your own strength gave out completely. Think about that for a moment. There were days, you know, the ones where you had nothing left, where you looked inside yourself for something to hold on to and found the cupboard empty, where you had already used every reserve, spent every ounce of courage, given away every last piece of strength you had, and somehow you made it through those days anyway. That was not you. That was him. And here is a picture that might help you understand what your life has actually looked like, even in the moments when it felt most desperate and most alone. Long ago, there was a people standing at the edge of the sea. Behind them, an army, horses and chariots, and the full force of everything that had been pursuing them and crushing them for years. In front of them, deep water, wide and impossible, with no bridge and no boat and no way forward that human eyes could see. To every reasonable mind, they were finished. There was no way out, no way back, no way forward. Just the sound of the enemy getting closer and the sound of the water that offered no mercy. And in that moment, when there was nothing left and nowhere to turn, the sea opened, not because they were strong enough, not because they had a plan, not because they had earned it. The sea opened because the one who made the sea was walking with them, and they walked through on dry ground. Beloved, there have been moments in your life that looked exactly like that shore. Pressure behind you, the weight of the past, the losses, the wounds, the things that kept chasing you. Uncertainty in front of you, no clear path, no guaranteed outcome, nothing solid to stand on. And weakness within you, the kind that goes bone deep, the kind that no amount of sleep could fix. And yet, a way opened, one step at a time, just enough light for the step you were on. And then a little more, and then a little more. That was not coincidence. That was the same hand that opened the sea. So when you look back now at the hardest chapters of your story, do not reduce what you went through to just suffering. Do not look at those years and call them only loss. He was forming something inside of them, something you can only see from this side of the water. He was building testimony, inside the silence testimony, inside the waiting testimony, inside the grief, the confusion, the sleepless nights, and the days that felt like they would never end testimony. And this brings us to something else he wants you to hear. Your scars, the ones on your heart, the ones you carry that no one can see, the ones left behind by people who should have stayed and didn't, by losses that should not have come so soon, by seasons of darkness that went on longer than felt fair. You may have looked at those scars and seen evidence of what hurt you, evidence that pain was powerful, evidence of everything you lost. But look at them again, through different eyes. In his hands, even scars become something else entirely. They become reminders. Reminders that the darkness did not have the final word. Reminders that you are not the proof that pain was powerful. You are the proof that his grace kept breathing through you. Read that again slowly. You are not the proof that pain was powerful. You are the proof that grace never stopped. And now this is the part he most needs you to hear. He knows that some part of you is still waiting for things to fall apart again. Some part of you still receives good days with suspicion. Some part of you still wonders if answered prayers will be taken away. Some part of you still braces when joy shows up, afraid to lean into it too completely. Afraid it will leave, afraid that relaxing your guard is the thing that will invite the next wave of pain. Bring that fear to him. Don't try to argue yourself out of it. Don't try to push it down. Don't be ashamed of it. Bring it. All of it. Every quiet fear, every old wound, every piece of bracing you have been doing for longer than you even realize. Bring it to him and let him do something extraordinary. Let him teach your soul a new rhythm. Because here is what he is saying to you right now, not about tomorrow, not about some distant future when everything is finally fixed and finally finished and finally easy. He is saying it about right now, about this moment, about this season you are standing in. You do not have to live as though the past is still chasing you. You do not have to sleep with your heart prepared for loss. You do not have to shrink every time joy touches your life. He is not saying there will never be trials again. He is not making a promise of a life without difficulty, without questions, without hard days. He is not offering you a path with no stones on it. He is saying something deeper than that. He is saying that you will not face whatever comes next as the person you once were. Because something has changed, something deep, something that the years of pressure and pain and perseverance have worked into the very core of who you are. The pressure that once broke your confidence has taught you to lean on something that cannot be shaken. The loneliness that once made you question your worth, those long, quiet seasons when you felt invisible, became the place where he whispered your name. The delay that once felt like rejection, like punishment, like he had looked away, that delay trained your spirit to wait without surrendering to despair. And the tears, the ones that felt useless, the ones you cried alone where no one would see, the ones you were almost ashamed of because they felt like weakness, those tears watered roots you could not see growing. And now, from this side of everything you have walked through, you are standing in a place where you can begin to see it. You are not just surviving. From where he stood watching you the whole time, he was preparing you. He was separating you from every foundation that could not hold. He was teaching you that your life cannot be measured by the weapons formed against it. Because no weapon, not one single weapon, can cancel what he has spoken over you. And there is one more image he wants to leave you with before we move forward. 3 people long ago were thrown into a furnace, not because they stumbled or failed or gave up, because they refused to bow down to something false, because they kept their integrity in a place where integrity was dangerous. And the fire was real, the heat was real, the flames were real. They went into the furnace. But they were not alone in there. Those watching from outside saw something that stopped them cold. They had thrown in 3, but inside the flames there were 4. The 4th one was with them in the fire, not waiting outside the furnace for them to come out. In the furnace, with them. Beloved, that is the truth about your life. That is the story underneath your story. In your hardest heat, in your most crushing pressure, in the moments when the flames were real and the fear was real and you could not see a way out, you were not abandoned. You were not alone. He was walking with you in the fire. You are not merely someone who made it out. You are someone who has been affirmed and strengthened and awakened. The battle did not erase your calling. The delay did not disqualify you. The wound did not rename you. The darkness did not own you. He has kept his light alive within you. So rise, gently, into this truth, not with pride, not with noise, not with the need to prove yourself to anyone. Rise with quiet assurance. Rise knowing he has been with you. Rise knowing your survival was not an accident. Rise knowing the hand that carried you through the last season is still holding you in this one. He is not finished with you. This is the first breath of a stronger walk, where fear no longer leads, where his presence becomes your shelter not just on the hardest days, but every single day. You are no longer just surviving. You are learning to stand as one who has been kept by heaven. He did not preserve you only so you could breathe again in private. Let that settle for a moment. You went through the fire. You came through the water. You survived the nights that had no morning in them for a very long time. And if you are like most people who have carried that kind of weight, there is a part of you that believed the goal was simply to get through, to come out the other side, to finally reach a place where the pain stopped and the peace began and you could rest quietly in what remained of your life. And rest is coming. That is a promise. But before we get there, he has something to show you about why he kept the light alive inside you. It was not only for you. Think about the last time the power went out in your home. Maybe it was a storm. Maybe it was the middle of winter, dark outside, the house suddenly gone quiet in that particular way that only happens when everything electric stops at once. And you moved through the darkness carefully, slowly, hands out in front of you, trying to remember where the furniture was, where the walls were, where you could safely put your next step. And then someone found a candle, just one small candle. Nothing spectacular, nothing that lit the whole room like daylight. But when that flame appeared, something changed immediately. People stopped bumping into things. People found their way to the table. People looked at each other's faces again instead of stumbling alone in the dark. The candle did not argue with the darkness. It did not shout at the room. It did not demand that the darkness explain itself or justify itself or apologize for existing. It simply burned. And because it burned, people began to see where to step. Beloved, this is what he kept alive inside you. Not a spotlight, Not a performance, not a platform that announces itself before it enters the room. A candle. A quiet, steady, faithful flame that burns not because you are impressive, but because he is present. A light that does not come from you manufacturing it or performing it or working yourself into it. It comes from staying close enough to him that his presence begins to shine through the cracks of everything you have lived through. And he is sending you into rooms that need exactly that. Not dramatic rooms. Not necessarily rooms that the world would call important. Families where tension has been sitting at the table for so long that everyone has forgotten what peace feels like. Conversations where one careless word could add more bitterness to a wound that is already infected. Workplaces where people speak sharply to each other because their own souls are exhausted, and they have never been taught another way. You may not always know at first why he placed you there, but if you stay close to him, the atmosphere can begin to shift through the peace you carry. Not through arguing, not through correcting everyone around you, not through making sure that every person in the room knows that you have the answer. Sometimes light looks like refusing to answer anger with anger. Sometimes it looks like listening to someone that everyone else dismisses. Sometimes it looks like staying honest when dishonesty would have been so much easier and so much less costly. Sometimes it is the quietest thing in the room, and it is the most powerful thing in the room at the same time. But here is where he needs to speak carefully, because there is a danger that comes with being strengthened, a danger that comes with being restored, a danger that most people never warn you about because it wears such respectable clothing. When you have been powerless for a long time and then strength begins to return, something old in the wound can reach for that strength with the wrong hand. Think about it honestly for a moment. There were seasons when you were dismissed, spoken over, pushed aside, made to feel small in rooms where your voice should have mattered, made to wonder whether anything you thought or felt or believed had any value at all. And those wounds are real. But here is what can happen quietly without you even noticing it at first. When he begins to restore your confidence, when he begins to lift your voice, when he begins to give you back the ground that was taken from you, the old pain can reach for that new strength and try to turn it into something it was never meant to be. Proof. The wounded heart that is just beginning to be restored can use its new strength to prove something. To show everyone who dismissed it that it cannot be ignored anymore. To correct every person who was wrong about it. To win every argument it was once forced to lose. To make every room recognize what it was never allowed to be before. And it calls that justice. But he calls it something else. Authority born from wounds wants to prove itself. Authority born from his spirit does not need to. This is one of the most important things he will ever teach you about the light you carry. The light becomes dangerous the moment the soul begins to love being seen more than it loves him. The moment compassion curls into superiority. The moment you begin to look at the people still wrestling in their darkness and feel something other than mercy for them, he asks you to remember. Remember how patiently he carried you. Remember how long it took. Remember every season when you were the one still wrestling, still stumbling, still getting it wrong in ways you could not even fully see yet. And then he shows you a picture, a room long ago, a table with bread and wine on it. 12 men who had walked with the Son of God for 3 years and still did not fully understand what they were part of. And the one with all authority, with all power, with everything in his hands does something that stops the room completely. He gets up from the table. He takes off his outer robe. He wraps a towel around his waist. He picks up a basin of water. And he kneels down at the feet of the men he made. He washes the dust and the dirt off the feet of the ones who would scatter when things got hard. He washes the feet of the one who would deny him 3 times before sunrise. He washes every foot in that room with the same steady, unhurried hands. He did not lose authority by kneeling. He revealed what true authority actually looks like. It is strong enough to serve. This is the kind of authority he is forming in you. Not the authority that needs a title to feel legitimate. Not the authority that enters a room and immediately starts looking for ways to establish that it belongs there. not the authority of a wounded heart demanding that the world finally pay its debt. The authority of a soul that knows it belongs to him, and therefore no longer has to control others in order to feel safe. And now comes something he wants you to receive, not just understand. Receive. A crown has been placed upon you. Not because you are finished, not because you have arrived at some perfect version of yourself that now deserves to be honored, not as a decoration for the eyes of the world, not as a reward for impressive performance, not as something to hold over the people around you. This crown is a sign of something else entirely. It is a sign that he has seen your faithfulness, not your perfection, your faithfulness. There is a difference that matters more than almost anything else you will ever hear. He saw every morning when you chose to get up and try again even though nothing in you wanted to. He saw every night when you refused to give up on the thing he placed inside you even when the thing seemed to be taking far too long and costing far too much. He saw the conversation where you held your peace when every part of you wanted to say the thing that would have made you feel better for 10 minutes and caused damage for 10 years. He saw the grief you brought to him instead of letting it turn into hatred. He collected all of it, every quiet yes, every hidden act of obedience, every moment of surrender that no one else witnessed or celebrated or even knew about. And from all of those ordinary, hidden, uncelebrated moments, he has been forming something. A crown not made of gold alone, but of surrender. One part formed from the morning you chose to pray again when prayer felt like shouting into an empty room. One part formed from the night you stayed when everything in you wanted to run. One part formed from the forgiveness you gave that cost you something real to someone who did not ask for it and perhaps did not deserve it. Heaven measures beauty differently than the world does. But this crown, beloved, does not give you permission to forget where it came from. The moment you begin to wear his confirmation as human superiority, the beauty of it becomes clouded. The moment you use what he has restored in you to look down on someone still in the middle of their hard season, you have misunderstood the crown completely. Keep your heart bowed. Keep your gratitude alive. Remember the place he lifted you from. And then the crown begins to show you its other gift. Because what he places upon a faithful soul is not only a sign of what has been endured, it is also an equipping for what is ahead. The crown carries discernment. You will begin to see things differently than you once did. There was a season when confusion could walk into your life through an open door and take a seat and stay for months before you even fully realized it was there. A word from someone could make you question everything he had ever spoken over you. A delay could feel like abandonment. An open door that looked bright and promising could draw you in, simply because you were tired of waiting, tired of the slow road, tired of the path that seemed to be going nowhere fast. But now something in you is beginning to shift. You will start to notice what carries life and what only carries noise. You will sense when a conversation is slowly pulling you back toward fear. You will feel when an opportunity looks right on the surface but quietly costs you something you cannot afford to lose. You will recognize when a voice sounds kind, but underneath the kindness pressure is trying to replace peace. This is not suspicion. This is not hardness. This is not closing yourself off from the world. This is maturity. This is love with its eyes fully open. Think about Daniel. A young man in a foreign land surrounded by voices and systems and a whole culture that did not honor what he honored. He could have hidden. He could have assimilated, completely given up everything that made him different, blended into the room so thoroughly that no one would ever know what he actually believed. But he carried a different spirit, not loudly, not with speeches or arguments or attempts to make everyone around him convert to his way of seeing things. Just a different quality of presence. A faithfulness in the small things, a wisdom that could not be explained by training alone. And slowly the people around him began to notice that something was different about the rooms where Daniel was. The atmosphere was different. The outcomes were different. He did not manufacture that. He maintained it by staying close to the source. Beloved, you are being asked to carry the same thing, not into a foreign country, into the rooms of your ordinary life, into the family gatherings where tension lives, into the friendships that are carrying more weight than anyone is saying out loud. into the spaces where someone is one conversation away from either sinking further into despair or being given one small reason to believe again. You do not need to say the right thing every time. You do not need to have the answer. Sometimes your job is simply to be the most peaceful presence in the room. And the crown that has been placed upon you, worn with humility, carried with gratitude, held close to the ground before him, will do more through your quiet faithfulness than 100 loud performances ever could. Stay close to the vine, not because you have to, because you have learned at great cost and over a long time what happens to the branch that disconnects. You have learned what happens to the light when the soul starts doing things in its own strength for its own reasons. On its own timeline, you have learned that his way is better. And from that learning, from that deep and sometimes painful education that only comes through actually living it, something steady has been built in you. Let that steadiness be your gift to every room you enter. Let his light move through you gently, without noise, without needing to be noticed, without requiring that the people around you immediately understand what they are experiencing when they are near you. Light works faithfully even when people need time to recognize it. Keep the flame clean. Keep the heart low. Keep walking close enough to him that what people sense in you is not a performance of strength, but a genuine overflow of peace. Because the crown you have been given is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of the part where what was formed in the fire starts to quietly set other things free. You have come a long way to get to this moment, not just in the last hour. In the last years, in the last decades of a life that has asked more of you than most people will ever fully understand. You have walked through seasons that had no name for what they were while you were inside them. You have carried weight that was never fully visible to the people around you. You have loved people who left. You have lost things that were supposed to stay. You have held on in the dark to a faith that sometimes felt like the only thing left standing between you and a grief too large to speak out loud. And you are still here. Still reaching, still listening, still willing to open your heart to something he wants to say that matters more than you know. But now he wants to speak to you about something that doesn't get talked about enough. Something that comes after the survival, after the restoration, after the light begins to return and the crown begins to settle and you start to understand what he has been forming in you through all of it. He wants to talk about what you let in and what you keep out, and the long, holy rest that your soul is being invited into before the next step begins. Because the next step is coming, and it is more significant than you have allowed yourself to believe. There was a city long ago surrounded by walls. Not because the people inside hated the world outside, not because they were afraid of every person who approached, but because what lived inside had value. There were families inside those walls. There were children learning to walk and elders holding decades of wisdom. There was a way of life, a set of values, a community built over generations that was worth protecting. And the gate was not locked forever. The gate opened for trade, for friendship, for the messenger bringing good news, for the traveler needing shelter. The gate let in what belonged and kept out what would destroy. Someone stood at that gate. Someone whose job was not to live in fear of everything approaching, but to know the difference. To know what was safe to welcome and what would cost more than it gave. To say yes to what should enter and no to what should not. That person was the gatekeeper. And beloved, he is calling you to be one. Not for a city, for your own life, for your heart, for the peace he has so carefully and so painstakingly rebuilt inside you, for the light he has kept alive through seasons that should have extinguished it, for the calling that is still growing, still deepening, still finding its full shape inside you even now. You have not always known how to guard these things. There were seasons when your gate was wide open, not because you were careless, but because you were lonely. Because you were afraid that closing the door meant closing yourself off from the only connection available to you. Because you had been taught somewhere along the way that love means constant availability. That saying no to someone meant saying no to love itself. So you let things in that took up residence in places they were never meant to occupy. A careless word that someone spoke over you maybe years ago, maybe in a moment of their own pain and frustration, and you carried it as though it were truth. You let it sit in the center of how you thought about yourself. You let it shape the way you walked into rooms and the way you answered questions about who you were and what you were capable of. A fear that crept in during a hard season and never fully left. A fear of loss, a fear of abandonment, a fear that the good thing would not last, and you organized your whole inner life around making sure you were never caught off guard by pain again. And in trying to protect yourself from pain, you kept yourself at a distance from joy as well. A relationship that drained more than it gave, that left you smaller every time you walked away from it, that made you feel like a problem to be managed rather than a person to be loved. And you kept the door open because closing it felt like failure. He saw all of it. He saw what entered and how long it stayed and what it cost you, and he is not speaking to any of that with condemnation. He is speaking to it with the voice of a gardener who knows exactly what has been taking nutrients from the soil and quietly removing it so that what he has planted can finally have room to grow. You are being made a gatekeeper, not out of fear, out of love for what he has restored, and there are things he is asking you to stop letting in. Stop letting in the voice that tells you that who you are right now is not enough. The voice that measures your worth against someone else's visible harvest and finds you lacking. The voice that says you should be further along by now, stronger by now, more certain by now, more arrived by now. That voice does not come from him. It has never come from him, and it does not deserve the access to your interior life that you have been giving it. Stop letting in the conversations that leave your spirit heavy and confused and slightly smaller than you were before they started. Not every conversation that feels difficult is one you should avoid. Some difficult conversations carry truth that sets you free, but some conversations are simply chaos looking for a home, and you are learning the difference now. You are learning to feel it. The weight that settles after certain exchanges, the peace that quietly drains, the subtle sense that something in you has been moved from its right place. Trust that. Stop letting in the habit that promises comfort in the short term and costs you clarity in the long term. The habit you return to when the anxiety gets loud enough, when the silence gets uncomfortable enough, when the loneliness gets heavy enough. He is not shaming you for having needed those things. He is offering you something better than the temporary relief they provide. He is offering you himself. And now, alongside the things to stop letting in, there are things to begin actively, intentionally, deliberately letting in more. Let in his word, not as a religious duty, not as a box to check that makes you feel like you are doing the right things. Let it in as food, as actual nourishment for a soul that has been running on empty for longer than it should have had to. There are words in Scripture that were written for a specific moment in your specific life, and you have not found them yet because you have not been reading slowly enough for them to find you. Read slowly. Read like someone who is not in a hurry. Read like someone sitting across a table from a person they love, listening not just for the information but for the tone, for what is underneath the words, for what is being communicated heart to heart. Let in wise counsel. Not every voice that speaks into your life is wise. Not every opinion that arrives with confidence deserves the weight you have sometimes given it. But there are people, perhaps one or two, perhaps even fewer than that, who have walked far enough and suffered honestly enough and stayed humble enough through it all that what they say carries something real. Let those voices in. Give them access. Let them speak to the places where your own vision is limited by the fact that you are still standing too close to what you are trying to see clearly. Let in rest. This is where he wants to stay for a while, because rest is not a small thing, and it is not a simple thing. And for many of the women listening to this right now, rest is the thing that has been on the list the longest and received the least. You were taught to be useful. You were taught that your value lived in what you produced and what you provided, and what you made possible for the people around you. You learned early that being needed felt safer than being still. That movement felt more virtuous than quiet. That the woman who kept going was more admirable than the woman who stopped, and so you kept going, long past the point where your body was asking you to slow down. long past the point where your spirit was showing signs of the kind of tired that sleep alone cannot fix. Long past the point where he was holding out rest to you, and you were walking past it with your hands already full of the next thing that needed doing. He is not angry about this, but he is asking you to receive something now that you have been walking past for too long. Rest is not giving up. Read that again. Rest is not giving up. Rest is not laziness. Rest is not the absence of faith or the abandonment of calling or the decision that you are done contributing to the world. Rest is not weakness dressed up in surrender. Rest is returning. It is returning to the one who gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. It is the act of laying down the weight that was never assigned to you in the first place, the urgency that belongs to him and not to you. The outcomes you have been gripping with both hands as though releasing them meant releasing hope itself. It is the trust that says he will not let go of what he started. What a radical thing to believe. What a countercultural, deeply restful, profoundly healing thing to allow yourself to actually believe. What he began in you will not fall apart while you sleep. What a radical thing to believe. What a countercultural, deeply restful, profoundly healing thing to allow yourself to actually believe. What he began in you will not fall apart while you sleep. Your calling does not disappear because you rested in his presence. It becomes healthier, more rooted, more connected to love and less connected to striving. The work you do from a rested soul carries a different quality than the work you do from exhaustion. People can feel the difference even when they cannot name it. And rest may look simpler than you have been making it. It may look like closing your eyes and praying without an agenda, without a list, without the performance of having the right words in the right order, just breathing and being present to the one who is always present to you. It may look like turning off the noise. Not all noise is sound. Some of the loudest noise in your life right now is happening in complete silence inside your own mind, in the relentless movement of worry and planning and rehearsing and reviewing that never fully stops. Turn it off, not forever, just for long enough to remember that you exist apart from it. It may look like taking a walk slowly enough that you actually see what you are walking through. The light on the leaves, the particular color of the sky at that hour, the way the air smells in that season, the small and specific beauty that God put there not for any grand purpose but simply because beauty is part of who he is. And he wanted you to see it. It may look like reading one psalm, not a chapter, one psalm. Slowly, reading it once and then reading it again and sitting with one line that catches something inside you and just letting it do what it came to do. It may look like saying no to something that you would normally say yes to out of guilt or obligation or the fear of disappointing someone. Saying no not because you do not care, but because you have finally understood that showing up depleted is not showing up at all. That a candle that has been burning without rest eventually has no light left to give. You are allowed to be restored. He is saying that directly to you right now in this moment. You are allowed to be restored, not after you have done enough. Not after you have served enough and given enough and proven enough that your rest is deserved, not as a reward at the end of a long road of earning it. Now, in this season, in this moment, you are allowed to pause without losing your calling. You are allowed to rest without losing your purpose. You are allowed to let him hold what you cannot fix tonight. And in the rest, something will happen that cannot happen any other way. The things that have been growing quietly in you, the things he has been tending in the hidden places, the seeds he planted in seasons you barely recognized as planting seasons, they need covering before they need exposing. They need quiet before they need noise. They need the dark, protected space of winter ground before they are ready for the open air of spring. Guard what he is growing in you. Not everything he plants in you arrives fully formed. Not every seed of calling, of healing, of restored identity, of new purpose arrives ready for the world to see and evaluate and respond to. Some things need to grow in the hidden place for longer than feels comfortable. Some things need to be held quietly the way a woman holds something precious that she is not ready to share, not because she is hiding it, but because she knows that certain tender and holy things need protection before they need proclamation. There will be a temptation to share too soon, to tell the dream before it has taken root deep enough to survive the skepticism of people who have not been invited into the process of it. To show the thing that is still fragile to hands that, however well-meaning, are not yet equipped to hold it carefully. Not because those people are your enemies, but because certain things that he is growing in you are still in the stage where exposure to the wrong wind could do damage that would take a long time to repair. Be patient with what is still becoming. Be gentle with what is still growing. Guard the peace he is building in you. Peace can feel unfamiliar at first when you have lived for a long time in the chronic hum of anxiety. When you have been the person who managed the crisis and held the family together and kept the plates spinning and anticipated every possible disaster before it arrived. Peace can feel suspicious. Too quiet. Like something is about to go wrong. Let peace learn to stay. Let it sit in you long enough that it starts to feel less like an absence and more like a presence. Because that is what it is. The peace he gives is not just the removal of chaos. It is a weight, a settled presence, a quiet knowing that you are held. And that changes the texture of everything. Guard the faith he is growing in you. There will be voices, and they do not always come from outside, that look at your situation with reasonable eyes and say that nothing has changed. That the waiting has gone on long enough. That the silence from heaven has been too long and too complete for there to be any meaningful answer coming. These voices will sound logical. They will sound like wisdom. They will sound like the responsible, mature acceptance of reality. Do not give them more authority than they deserve. Faith is not blind to reality. Faith sees reality clearly and still chooses to trust that the one who created reality is not finished with it yet. Faith says, I see this and I see him. And what he has spoken over my life outweighs what my circumstances are currently reporting. Hold on to that. And now comes the moment he has been leading you toward through everything in this last hour. The door. You have seen it. You have known it was there. Perhaps you have been standing in front of it for longer than you want to admit. Perhaps you have walked up to it, reached for the handle, felt the weight of it under your hand, and then stepped back. Put your hand down. Told yourself you needed more time, more signs, more certainty, more confirmation that what was on the other side was really what you thought it was. And he understands. He does not stand at the door with impatience or disappointment. He stands there with you. But he is asking you something now. Are you waiting because he said wait? Or are you waiting because you are afraid there is a difference? And it matters. And he is asking you to be honest about it, not with him because he already knows, but with yourself because you need to know in order to take the next right step. Holy waiting listens. Holy waiting prepares. Holy waiting remains surrendered and open and in motion in the ways that are available to move even while the larger door is not yet open. Holy waiting carries peace. There is a settled quality to it, a rest within the waiting, a sense that the timing belongs to him, and that his timing is trustworthy even when it is slow. Fearful waiting is different. Fearful waiting asks for more signs after the signs have already been given. It keeps requesting confirmation of what has already been confirmed. It mistakes the discomfort of the unknown for a message that the unknown should not yet be entered. It looks at the door and finds reasons why the door might not be the right door, might not be the right time, might not be meant for someone like you. And underneath all of those reasons there is one thing. Fear. Not wisdom, not discernment. Fear in a wisdom costume. He is asking you to look at that honestly. Because there is a story, a very old story of a people who stood at the edge of the land they had been promised. And the land was real. The promise was real. The faithfulness of the one who had brought them all the way from slavery through the wilderness, through water and fire and hunger and thirst, that faithfulness was absolutely unchangeably real. And they looked at what was ahead and saw giants. And the giants were real too. They are not asking you to pretend the obstacles do not exist, that the challenges are not genuine, that the road ahead will be easy and uncomplicated and without difficulty. But they looked at the giants and forgot who had brought them there. They measured the size of the obstacle against the size of their own strength and found themselves insufficient. And they were right. They were insufficient. Their own strength was not equal to what stood between them and the promise. But that was never the calculation that mattered. The calculation that mattered was how big is the one standing with us compared to the giants in front of us. And when you run that calculation, the giants change their size. Beloved, do not stay at the threshold of your destiny. The threshold is not your home. The doorway was never meant to be the place where you set up permanent residence, where you arrange your life in the in-between space, where you become so accustomed to looking through the glass at what could be that you forget to notice you are not actually inside it yet. Your destiny does not always announce itself with trumpets and grand ceremony. Sometimes it begins with a quiet yes, a conversation you have been avoiding, a step of obedience that looks smaller than you expected the next step to look. A decision to stop living beneath what he has spoken over you. A choice to stop apologizing for the growth he has cultivated in you, to stop making yourself smaller to fit into spaces that were never sized for who you are becoming. You do not need to see the whole road. You never have. Look back at your life and notice honestly how rarely you had the full picture before you took the step. How often clarity came after movement, not before it. How many times he illuminated just enough path for the next step and not one step beyond, and it was enough and you were held and you made it through. That is how it works. That is how trust becomes something more than a word. You will not figure out the entire next chapter before you begin writing it. Some of what you need to know can only be learned on the road. Some of the strength you will need for what is ahead can only be developed by actually walking into what is ahead. Some of the confirmations you are waiting for can only come to feet that are already moving. The door may not look like what you imagined. It may be quieter than you expected, smaller on the outside than what your faith has been picturing, less dramatic, less immediately impressive, less obviously significant than the scale of everything you have been through seems to deserve. Do not reject the door because it does not flatter your imagination. Long ago, the most significant arrival in all of human history happened in a stable, in the cold, in the dark, in a town so small and so overlooked that the people who were supposed to be watching for it almost missed it entirely. A manger that held a baby that held the weight of everything. The beginning did not look like the significance it carried. Do not make that same mistake with the door in front of you. As you step through, there are things he is asking you to leave on this side of the threshold. Leave behind the need for everyone's approval before you move. You have been waiting for a consensus that is never fully coming. You have been waiting for the people who knew the version of you that lived before the healing to give their blessing to the version of you that exists now. And some of them will not give it. Not because they are cruel, but because they are still relating to who you were, and who you were no longer needs to be defended or apologized for or shrunk to fit into their understanding of you. Love them, and step through anyway. Leave behind the habit of apologizing for your growth. You did not grow to make anyone uncomfortable. You grew because he grew you. Because he tended you and pruned you and watered you and let certain hard seasons do their necessary work in your soil. The growth is not something you owe anyone an explanation for. Leave behind the shame that kept you small. The shame that said you had forfeited your right to a full life by the mistakes of your past. By the failures that still sometimes surface in memory with the particular sharpness of something that has not fully healed. He has spoken over that shame. He has called it by name and released you from it. You do not have to carry it through the door with you. Leave behind the fear that peace is too good to last. This one is subtle. This one whispers rather than shouts. But it has kept more people at the threshold of their destiny than almost anything else. The quiet belief that goodness is temporary. That restoration is a pause between losses. That the settled life is something that happens to other people and not quite to you. Leave that behind. Let it stay on this side of the door. And take with you what he has formed. Take the light he kept alive through every season that should have extinguished it. Carry it gently. It was kept for a reason. Take the humility that came not from being told to be humble, but from actually living through things that showed you exactly how much you need him. That kind of humility does not make you small. It makes you unshakable. Take the discernment. The crown carries the ability to see deeper than the surface, to know what carries life and what only carries the appearance of it. Take the steadfastness that has been built in you through every time you chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. Take the memory that the hidden seasons were not wasted. That the quiet years, the years that looked like nothing from the outside, were in fact the years when the deepest roots were growing. Take that knowing with you and let it keep you steady when the new road has a season of hiddenness too. Take the foundation that has been rebuilt under you piece by piece through every moment of surrender and obedience and return. You are not stepping through alone. He goes before you, not in front of you at a distance blazing a trail and leaving you to catch up. Before you in the sense that he is already there, already in the room you have not entered, already preparing grace for the conversation you have not yet had, already arranging what needs to be arranged for the next chapter of your story in ways you will not see until you arrive and then look back and realize that nothing was left to chance. He walks beside you, every step. The ones that feel confident and the ones that feel uncertain and the ones that feel like you might be getting it wrong. He guards behind you. What you are leaving on the other side of the threshold cannot follow you through unless you carry it, and he is helping you set it down. So step. Not perfectly, not with complete certainty, not after every old fear has gone completely quiet and every question has been fully answered and every risk has dissolved into guaranteed safety. Step while your heart trembles in his hands. Step while the road opens slowly enough that you have to trust him for the next piece. Step while the outcome is still his to hold and not yours to control. Step because the waiting that was holy has done its work. Step because the rest has restored what the long road depleted. Step because the light inside you was not kept alive through all of this to remain hidden behind a door you are afraid to open. Step because he is asking you to. And he has never asked you to do anything alone. Destiny is not reached by one grand moment. It is entered by faithful steps, surrendered days, renewed courage when the courage from yesterday has been used up and a new supply is needed. A heart that keeps saying yes to the one who has been faithful through every season of no. The door before you is not your enemy. The threshold is not where you belong. You have been kept by heaven through too much and for too long to stop at the entrance of what he has prepared. Rise with the rest he has given you. Walk with the truth he has spoken over you. Enter with humility, with courage, with the quiet confidence of someone who has been carried through things that should have finished her and did not. Do you remember the prayer you used to pray, "Father, help me make it through the night. Don't let me fall apart, just let me last until morning"? He heard that prayer. Every single time you prayed it in the hospital room, at the kitchen sink, in the car, in the driveway, when you could not yet go inside. He was there, and he answered. Not always the way you expected, not always when you wanted, but he answered with something more lasting than a single night of relief. He answered with a life, your life, carried, shaped, refined, and still unfolding. That prayer was the beginning of a conversation that he has not finished having with you. And this moment right now, this is part of his answer. You are not the same person who prayed that prayer. You have been kept by heaven, lit from within by something that the longest nights could not put out. Crowned not by the world's measure, but by the faithfulness that only he could see. The door is open. He is already on the other side. And the hand that held you through every night you were not sure you would survive is the same hand reaching back to you now. Take it. Step through, beloved. He has not brought you this far to leave you at the door.